Well, I don't know about you, but I think it's time that I got this now lovely Singer 222K put back together. Let me see what I can do. Marie did such a beautiful job on the paint. She had to strip all of the old paint off before she could put the new paint on. Here are all the parts, hopefully all the parts. If you followed the first video, you might know I didn't totally disassemble this machine. It came to me partially disassembled. So we'll see if I have all the parts. Now the last two parts I took off of this machine before having it painted were the rock shafts. And I'm going to put them back in, and they go in a very specific way. This one has to go first. I've already installed the centers. One of these centers here, each one of these is for one of the rock shafts. This one is going to go in first, and there's a little stud down here. I don't know if you can see that. Right there, that this little dog bone here is going to attach to. So I have to work it onto that stud and onto this center. I have to have the center in before I attempt this because it pushes in this way, so there's no way to put it in after. It has to go in first. So I'm just going to work with my part and try to get that little dog bone on the stud and then work it up onto the center. So now my dog bone is on the stud down here. You should be able to see it. And the rock shaft itself is on the center. So what I'm going to do while I hold that in place is I'm going to take the other center and it's going to go in right here. So I have to be able to hold this in place while I put this center through this little hole that's right here, and there is just hardly any room at all to get in there. And I need a way to hold this into place. Let's see if that helps a little bit. And try to just work this center. I'm also keeping the flat spot on the center where it needs to go. Ha ha, there we go. Okay, now holding my finger here, I'm going to put that set screw in. I'm checking my flat spot here. I can see it also up in this hole. I believe I can see it. Yes, I can see it. So I think what I'll do is I'll put this set screw in first. And I don't think I'll show you every part of putting this back together because I didn't take off all these parts. I think, you know, I might have already mentioned this came to me partially disassembled. So some of this is truly a puzzle to me, but these I did take off. So I do know how they go on. So I'm tightening down that set screw first, and we'll put this set screw back in. And then we can put the other center on, or the other rock shaft on. So for the second rock shaft, the one center that still needs to go in the machine is going to go through right here and come out this way. I've already got this center installed. Now, this dog bone goes on a different post up in the top. Can you see this little post right here? So what I have to do is I'm going to feed it up through this hole that's up here on the top. But before I press it all the way onto the center, I have to get that dog bone on that post. So let's flip it over and we'll see if I can manipulate it. This part is a little more tricky. Oh, almost. I don't know how much you can see. Okay, come on, there we go. The dog bone is on the post. Now carefully get this center in before anything shifts. I've got my flat side of my center here. Let's see. There we go. And whoop. All right. Do not move. Do not breathe. So these will start moving once I get the feed fork installed. And that's going to be in just a little bit. But I thought you might be interested to see how that all went together. Right now they're not going to move for me. Double check my work. I have the dog bone up on the little post here, and on this post for the other one, they're back in. Moving along. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I just thought you'd like to see that part. I'll see what other little parts I can show you. So after the rock shafts are in, the next step will be to put these two forks back in. On this side, you're going to see this is sort of similar to the 221. It is the feed fork. And once we have this in and all the parts back together, we'll be able to use this eccentric screw right here to adjust the stitch length. Now, in a 221, we would have a feed connecting rod. It would not be another fork like this. This, I do not know what to call it. So I will call it a feed connecting fork. I have scoured the internet for a parts list that actually has the names of the parts, not just the numbers, but so far all I've found are diagrams. So this is probably my guess. Using this eccentric screw here is how I will adjust the height of the feed dogs. This fork works with a part that's very much like the feed block here. And this little part here, it says "so darn." So it's adjusting the height of the feed dogs so that you could totally drop them on this machine and actually darn or free motion quilt. So it's going to go in first because in the top of the machine right here is where it's going to fit, and then the feed fork will fit here. And I have to access the screw hole for the block for this feed connecting fork in here first. If I put this in first, it would be blocking it and I couldn't get to it. So that's what I will be doing next. And it's going to be a little bit tricky because I'm working with this part right here, and there's a little slide block that's got to fit in just perfectly so that it can slide back and forth when we raise and lower the feed dogs. So that's what all the parts look like. I have attempted to put this in once already, and I know it's going to take a lot of patience. So if I can show it, I will, but I'm really going to be focusing on just getting everything lined up perfectly. But if you wondered what all these things look like inside, this is what they look like. So a little bit different. So after numerous attempts to put this in, I think the best way to do it, I'm hoping this will work, is I have taken this block here that the slide block goes into, and I've put the slide block in. And now I'm going to put all this on this feed connecting fork, if you will, and I'm actually going to slide it in through this hole. When it's all together, it will fit. Then, do you see how this spins? If I can get this to spin, which once I have it in, what I'm going to do is temporarily add this knob back in so I have a little bit of control. I think that's how I'm going to do it. I'll slide this in, make sure that the feed fork, if you will, isn't blocking this hole. Then I have my screw ready on the screw starter with the little spring washer on it. I'll feed it in through this hole and hopefully tighten everything down. If I put this in first and then feed this fork up through the bottom, the pin on the side of the fork sticks out too much for me to line up the fork part with the little cam it needs to rest on, and I can't get it together. So I think I'm going to have to try it this way. So we'll see if I can get it to work. So I got it in. Whew. Actually, I didn't feed it through this hole. I had it all assembled and I laid it like this, and I did have to feed it up through the bottom. And I don't know, it was just a lucky moment, but as soon as I got things kind of stable and the fork worked up onto the cam, I put this little lever in temporarily just to give me easier way to hold that block in place, and then worked that screw in as quick as I could. I tipped it up on its nose once I had everything aligned, and then kind of nothing could fall and get out of place. So now all I have to do is connect this rod down here with the eccentric screw, and it goes in this way instead of this way, which is what we would be used to on the 221s. So eccentric screw right here, and then work it in. There we go. And then you see you have this tiny little space in here to actually get the nut to fit on. So I'll go ahead and get the nut on and tighten it down, and then put together the front part with the plate that says sew and darn, and I'll show you how that goes on. Okay, now we can kind of see this starting to come to life a little bit. If you look down in here, when I turn the hand wheel, or the end of the shaft that the hand wheel is going to go on, now there's just a tiny bit of movement. This is traveling up and down. This is not the travel that's going to go front to back. It is up and down. So that eccentric screw is how I will eventually set the height of the feed dogs. And the funny part is, there's the head of the eccentric screw. And so getting a screwdriver in here is going to be fun, but I've been through something worse than that, so no big deal. So now I can go ahead and put this plate on. So the way that it works is there is this long screw with a spring that's going to go on, and then this is going to go on. And what it does is it provides a springiness, and I'll show you how that works. First, we're going to kind of angle this to where we can get to it. I'm going to go ahead and put that plate in place, and then reach in and start to screw this in to that block. Once I get it started, I'll move it up here. Now what I want to do is I want to screw it down as far as it will go. So about there. Now I still have to put the little screws in to hold the plate in place, but this springiness would allow you to pull back and move the lever down for darning, and that would be dropping the feed dogs, and then pulling up, and you're in the position to sew where the feed dogs will be coming up above the needle plate. And I can see just a tiny bit of movement here when I pull this lever. And once I have it adjusted properly, my guess is I'll see much more movement here. So that's how that goes on. And I'll get these on, and then I'll move over to the feed fork, which that process is going to be so much easier. So now I have the feed regulator all assembled. I am just going to slide my feed fork in, and I have the roller on the feed fork. We'll see if it actually stays in place or not. And once I get it in, we'll see if I can't secure it with the eccentric screw. I don't need to put the nut on, I just want to kind of hold it in place if I can. Now that that's on, I'm going to flip this around. Now I'm going to take the feed regulator and I'm going to go ahead and get it on the roller and then flip it up like this. What I'm looking for is down in this hole. I want to make sure that the feed block is actually lined up with this hole. Then I can take my screw with the spring on and just get it started here with the screw starter. And now I can flip it back around and I don't have to worry about this going anywhere. Okay, so this doesn't flop around anymore. I'm really just worried about it chipping the paint if it's flopping around. We'll go ahead and put these screws back in. Okay, so I have the eccentric screw and nut back on here. And what I noticed initially was if I had it set at a shorter stitch length, I could turn the hand wheel. I put the hand wheel back on once I got this screw for the feed block back in, because it just makes it easier to move all of these parts, especially when I'm going to be putting the needle bar and the presser bar back in. But on the shorter stitch length, the hand wheel spins no problem. But as I got further down to the longer ones, I had more resistance. So I checked a couple things. I actually loosened the rock shaft up a little bit to make sure that I didn't have the center too tight so the rock shaft wasn't able to move like it needed to. That wasn't the problem, but I could hear a gritty noise. And if you guys remember, this machine was packed with sand, some sort of media. There were places in the hook area that I could not disassemble it as far as I wanted to, specifically where the feed dogs are. So the feed dogs are going to sit right here. Here's the screw holes for the feed dogs. This has a plate. There's actually, looks like 3 plates, the feed dog, then another plate, and then the plate that the whole hook assembly rests against. That had sand in it. And that is what I am feeling and hearing as far as grit. So the solution was to flood it with oil, get down in there with tiny Q-tips, and just keep running it until all that grit had broken up. And it's almost gone now. So I think once I start running the machine and I can spin it fairly fast, we'll eventually flush out all that grit. So everything is back on. And the next step would be for me to put the hook assembly on, and then I'll get the needle plate on, and I can use those 2 eccentric screws to adjust how the travel is from front to back, as well as how high the feed dogs go up and down within the needle plate. So that's what I'm going to do next. But the most interesting parts of this machine were definitely this portion here, the little fork that is going to be raising and lowering the feed dogs, getting that back together. And then this was pretty standard, but the way it works over here is so much different than the 221s. So onward and upward. Now, the feed dogs are on, the needle plate's on. I'll show you that in a second. But first, I'm going to throw in a quick picture just so you guys can see the difference, the before and after of this portion of the machine, what it looked like when I first got it. Such a difference between then and now. Anyway, to adjust the height of the feed dogs, it is this eccentric screw here. Not this one. This one is the travel, how it goes back and forth in the needle plate. This is the height. In my opinion, these machines weren't really designed for you to ever have to make this adjustment. If you look, there is no room to get in here really easily with the screwdriver. So you're sort of working at an angle, but it's done now. So let's flip it over. Now, it was only because I took all of those parts out that I even had to do this, but now we can see the feed dogs come up, they're at the appropriate height, and back down. And the reason why you wouldn't really ever need to adjust this, in my opinion, is because this machine came with this sew or darn. Darn is lowering the feed dog, so I pull this out, pull it down. Now the feed dogs remain down, even when the hand wheel is turning and all the parts are moving. So they do not come up above the needle plate at all. So that is set. Now I can get on to putting all the parts back inside the nose. So everything in the nose went in without a hitch, thankfully, and I'll show you that in just a second. But what I want to do now is, after doing all the work in the bottom end, putting in the feed fork and everything else, I want to see if my needle is going to catch the lower thread from the bobbin. I had to retime the hook. The hook was off by 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch. It was very, very minor, but it would have definitely been a problem because it was behind the needle too far. So thankfully that was not hard. I held my breath with that because I didn't know how frozen that shaft was going to be to the gear, but everything was fine. I was able to retime the hook. So this is the true test now to see if we're going to get quality stitches or not. So what I'm going to do is focus down here. I'm going to rotate the hand wheel and we'll watch this needle come down. Everything's threaded and it should catch the thread from the bobbin. So I'm going to lower my foot. I've already checked the upper thread tension. It should be working fine. I'm just going to hang on to this thread and I'm going to turn the hand wheel and we're going to watch the needle go down. And now watch the thread come around. It's going to go across the bobbin case. It's right down there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's definitely there. And we'll spin it back around. And there it is. We have caught the thread, the lower thread. So that is good news for sure. So let me show you what it looks like in here. Now we'll take this off. And there is inside the nose. All the parts are back in and everything is working properly. So very exciting. I also got the bobbin winder parts back on and I greased up the gears. So what is next for this machine is that I will start to put the electrical back in. And then I also have to put on all of the parts, the cover under here, and then get the assembly right for the bed portion that fits here, the feet, all of that. So those will be the next steps, and then we can turn it on. And here she is, all finished, all put together. There is really nothing left to do other than test sew with this beautiful 222. It was a journey and I'm happy to say it is finished. A couple things I have left actually is when I'm done test sewing with the machine, before I ship it back to the customer, I'm changing out the plug style. You can see now it has the flat prongs. My customer has ordered a new electronic style foot control and it will not work with the flat prongs. So once I test everything with what I have here, I will change out the plug for the ones with the round prongs, and that's going to work with her new foot control. She has to do a 220 volt control, so I'm really excited that we could find one that would work for her. So we're going to use the original foot control that came with the machine for one last test, but this will be gone after that. I'm going to plug it into the converter that my friend Bob Fowler was so kind to give to me. So let's do that. Now I just want to plug her in and we will test the light. And that turns on nicely for us. So we have our light in and I already threaded this machine so it will be ready to sew for us. So let's just see how it works. I just have a couple pieces of cotton here. That's all we're going to use. Stitching on a 3, starting at the longest stitch length. Okay, here we go. I hear clacking from the spool pin, which is a little annoying, but there's really no way to get rid of that. Beautiful. Let's turn the corner here and then do a smaller stitch. Move it up to about 8 or 10. and come back down at even a smaller stitch. Throw it into reverse and back forward again. All right, let's check this out. So here is the front with the 6 stitches per inch down to an 8 or 10, and then an even smaller stitch. And there is the back. Isn't that awesome? Do you remember what this looked like when it first came to me? I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get her sewing again. And not only is she sewing again, she's gorgeous. She has her very own unique personality. I think Minnie is an excellent name for this sewing machine. So let me show you one other thing before we go. So I've taken the upper thread out just because I want you to hear it without the spool bouncing around, because it really is a quiet machine. We'll go ahead and put the foot down. I just love her. And when we're winding a bobbin, I know her owner is going to be so pleased. And that's it. Minnie is finished and she is ready to go home where she belongs. I want to thank my customer for trusting me and Marie to work on this machine for her. After having a bad experience, I'm sure it wasn't easy to send it off all the way across the ocean to someone you've never met. We had so much fun restoring your machine and you're going to love her now. Marie at Promethean Sewing Machines, awesome. She did a great job. It took a lot of patience to strip this machine down and then repaint it, and it looks great. I want to thank Bob Fowler. He was just a phone call away anytime I needed him. I can't tell you what I would do without a Bob Fowler in my life. The Singer Featherweight Shop, they were extremely helpful, and just an email and they would answer in a day. They supplied some parts that I couldn't find that were crucial and missing on this machine when I got it. So thank you for being there and being so helpful. I appreciate you. Finally, I just want to give a big thank you to my husband. He knows why I appreciate him so much, but I don't know what I would do without that extra pair of hands sometimes, or just the encouragement that he always gives me. He's so supportive and I appreciate that. And then to all of you, thanks for watching. Thank you for your encouragement as well. I'm excited to finally show you Minnie. She's running beautifully now and she's going home. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.